The red sand of Arkal swirled outside the reinforced windows of Outpost Orion 7, casting an otherworldly glow across the command center. Inside, the air was tense with the unnatural quiet that precedes a storm. Members of the Orion Alliance fleet stood at attention, their diverse forms creating a mosaic of galactic cooperation, or at least, that was the intention. Squad leader Aaron stood rigid, his Varic physiology making him tower over most of the humans present. His exoskeleton armor gleamed under the artificial lights, intricate patterns etched into the metal telling the story of his clan and battles. Despite the Alliance being 3 years old, the integration of human and Varic military units remained an experiment fraught with tension. This remote research outpost on the harsh desert planet of Arkal served as the perfect testing ground, isolated enough that any diplomatic incidents could be contained, yet strategically positioned along the border of an uncharted star system. The year 3247 marked what many hoped would be a turning point in interspecies relations, though Aaron privately harbored doubts. Across the room, Aya adjusted her research tablet, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. At 28, she was remarkably young to be the lead xenobiologist on such a crucial mission. But her reputation for brilliance had preceded her. Her slender frame betrayed nothing of the inner strength that had carried her through 3 grueling years of academy training and fieldwork on hostile planets. The atmospheric samples indicate potential for adaptation, she was saying, her voice clear and measured as she addressed the gathered officers. If we can modify the Varic exosuits to filter the specific toxins in the sandstorms rather than blocking all particulates, we could extend mission durations by 47%. Aaron shifted his weight, the neural interface of his armor translating his discomfort into minute adjustments. He found the human's approach distasteful, always seeking to modify, to change what was established. Verac warriors had worn the same style of armor for 7 generations. Its limitations were accepted as challenges to overcome through training and will, not technological shortcuts. Major Rail, the Varic commanding officer, nodded thoughtfully. His older, battle-scarred armor bore witness to decades of service. Yet he seemed more amenable to human suggestions than most of his kind. "Continue your research, Specialist Aya," Rail said, his deep voice resonating through the translator. "Lieutenant Mira, ensure her team has access to the necessary equipment." Lieutenant Mira, a compact human woman with close-cropped blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing, acknowledged the order with a crisp nod. She had been Aya's friend since academy days and had requested this assignment specifically to work alongside her. "Before we conclude," Rail continued, "we must address the upcoming diplomatic reception. The Orion Alliance High Command will be sending representatives to evaluate our progress. This will be the first formal evaluation of our integrated unit." The tension in the room thickened. Evaluations meant scrutiny, and scrutiny often led to reassignments, or worse, the dissolution of programs deemed unsuccessful. For many in the room, both human and Verac, this outpost represented either a punishment posting or a rare opportunity for advancement, depending on one's perspective. "Squad leader Aaron will oversee security protocols," Rail announced, causing Aaron to straighten even further. "Specialist Aya will present the research findings on behalf of the human contingent." Aaron felt a surge of pride mixed with resentment. Security was indeed his domain. But having to coordinate with the human scientists would complicate matters, especially this one, Aya, who seemed oblivious to proper Varic protocols and courtesies. As the meeting adjourned, officers and specialists filed out of the command center. Aaron deliberately slowed his pace, observing the interactions between species. The humans clustered together, their voices creating a cacophony of overlapping sounds that his translator struggled to separate. The Verak moved individually, maintaining precise distances from one another as dictated by rank and honor protocols. Squad leader. Aya's voice caught him off guard as she approached directly. Another human discourtesy. A proper subordinate would wait to be acknowledged. Specialist, he responded coolly, the translator rendering his tone flat. I'd like to discuss the integration of our research data with your security protocols, she said, her eyes meeting his without hesitation. Some of our findings might impact your deployment strategies during the reception. Aaron felt his neck ridges stiffen, a Verak sign of irritation invisible beneath his armor. Security protocols are not subject to scientific interference. Not interference, she corrected, her expression remaining professional despite his dismissive tone. Enhancement. The sandstorms carry electromagnetic properties that could affect your armor's communication systems. We've developed a shielding solution. Before Aaron could respond, the room's atmosphere shifted. Several officers had remained behind, watching the exchange with interest. Among them was Karo, a Verak security specialist known for his traditionalist views and uncompromising adherence to ancient codes. The human speaks directly to a squad leader without proper acknowledgement of rank. Karo observed loudly in the Verak language, intentionally bypassing his translator. Aaron stiffened. The comment placed him in a difficult position. To ignore it would suggest weakness in upholding Verak traditions. To acknowledge it would create diplomatic tension. Aya, unaware of the exact words, but recognizing the language switch as a deliberate exclusion, continued undeterred. If we could schedule a brief meeting with your security team. Silence. Aaron commanded, switching to common speech. The gathered officers grew still. You will address me with proper respect, human. Aya blinked, genuinely confused. I apologize if I've been discourteous. Squad leader, that wasn't my intention. Intention is irrelevant. Proper form is what matters. Aaron was acutely aware of Karo and the other Verak watching, judging his response. A memory flashed unbidden. His family compound in flames during the Verak Civil War. His parents' bodies crushed beneath collapsed structures. All because someone had failed to observe proper protocols that would have revealed the infiltrators. Aya reached out, a human gesture of placation that violated another Verak taboo, touching a warrior's armor without permission. Squad leader, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. The next moments unfolded with terrible clarity. Aaron felt an unexpected surge through his neural interface, a hot command that bypassed conscious thought. His arm moved of its own accord, hand connecting with Aya's face in a sharp, open-palmed strike. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent room. Aya stumbled backward, her expression transforming from confusion to shock as she lost balance. Her arm struck the edge of a metal console as she fell, the crack of bone audible even above the exclamations of the witnesses. Time seemed to freeze. Humans rushed toward Aya, while Verak officers moved into defensive stances, reading the sudden aggression as a potential threat situation. Lieutenant Mira was already at Aya's side, her face contorted with fury as she looked up at Aaron. "What the hell was that?" she demanded, supporting Aya, who was cradling her arm, her cheek already reddening where Aaron's hand had connected. Aaron stood motionless, horrified at what had just occurred. His armor's neural interface showed no malfunction, yet he had not consciously decided to strike the human. It was as if his body had acted independently, responding to some phantom command. She violated protocol, Caro stated flatly, moving to stand beside Aaron in a show of Varric solidarity. Major Rail pushed through the gathering crowd, his authority creating a pocket of calm in the chaos. "Stand down, all personnel," he ordered, his voice cutting through the rising arguments. "Medical team to the command center immediately. Security, clear this room except for principals involved," as the room emptied of all but key individuals. Aya sat on a chair brought by one of her colleagues, a medical scanner already humming over her injured arm. Her eyes never left Aaron's face, her expression not of fear or anger, but of analytical intensity, as if he were a specimen under her microscope. "Hairline fracture of the radius," announced the medic, a human doctor whose name Aaron had never bothered to learn. "And significant soft tissue damage to the cheek and jaw. Squad leader Aaron," Major Rael said, his voice dangerously controlled. "Explain your actions." Aaron found himself at a loss. How could he explain what he himself did not understand? "The specialist violated multiple protocols of respect and boundaries," he began, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. "So you struck a civilian researcher?" Rail's tone made it clear how inadequate this justification was. Aaron faltered. "It was not my intention to cause harm." "Not your intention." Lieutenant Mira spat the words. "You're a trained Varric warrior. You knew exactly what would happen when you hit someone half your size." Aya raised her uninjured hand, silencing her friend. "I'd like to hear Squad Leader Aaron's full explanation," she said, her voice steady despite the pain she must have been feeling. All eyes turned to Aaron. In that moment, standing before the judging stares of both species, something dark and buried stirred in his memory. A coded transmission received that morning, marked with the highest security clearance. Find weakness in the Alliance. Create justified separation. The Varric must stand alone again. I have no explanation that would satisfy both our cultures." He finally said, "I will accept whatever disciplinary action is deemed appropriate." Major Rail's expression hardened. "This incident requires a formal investigation. Squad Leader Aaron, you are relieved of duty pending the outcome. Surrender your weapons and report to quarters for isolation." As Aaron unfastened his ceremonial blade, the ultimate humiliation for a Varric warrior, he caught Aya's gaze once more. There was something in her eyes beyond pain or accusation, a curiosity, an intelligence working behind the facade of injured innocence. In that moment, he felt certain of one thing. This human was more dangerous than any he had encountered before. The doctor approached Aya with a bone-knitting device. "Hold still. This will stabilize the fracture until we can get you to medical for proper treatment." "Thank you, Dr. Morris," she replied, wincing slightly as the device activated. As Aaron was escorted from the command center, the weight of what had happened began to settle upon him. Whatever forces were at work, whether his own failing control or something more sinister, he had just become the catalyst for precisely the kind of diplomatic incident that could unravel years of careful alliance building. And somewhere deep in his consciousness, a terrible suspicion began to form, that perhaps that had been the plan all along. The investigation room was deliberately neutral. No cultural symbols from either species adorned the walls, and the lighting had been calibrated to accommodate both human and Varric visual ranges. Aaron sat rigidly in a chair designed for his physiology, stripped of his armor and wearing only the base mesh undersuit that all Varric warriors wore beneath their exoskeletons. Without his armor, He felt naked, vulnerable. The neural connections that normally linked his nervous system to the sophisticated combat systems lay dormant, leaving phantom sensations along his spine and limbs. Major Rail sat across from him, flanked by two human security officers whose hands rested conspicuously near their sidearms. The recording devices positioned around the room hummed quietly, documenting every word and gesture for review by Alliance Command. "For the record," Rail began, "this is the preliminary inquiry into the incident between Squad Leader Arin and Specialist Aya. Timestamp 3247.157. 2342 Orion Standard Time." Arin remained silent, staring at a point just above Rail's head as Varric military discipline demanded, "Describe the events leading to your assault on Specialist Aya." Rail continued, his tone formal but with an undercurrent of disappointment that cut deeper than anger would have. "I was approached by the human specialist after the briefing," Arin stated flatly. "She violated protocol by addressing me directly without proper acknowledgement of rank. When corrected, she attempted physical contact with my armor, a violation of warrior sanctity. And this justified physical violence." Rail's eye ridges contracted, a Varric expression of skepticism. "No, sir." Arin forced the words out. "It did not." "Then explain your actions." Arin hesitated. How could he explain the momentary loss of control? The sensation of his body acting without his conscious command? Such an admission would sound like madness, or worse, cowardice, blaming some external force rather than accepting responsibility. "I have no explanation that would preserve my honor, sir." Rail leaned forward. "We are not concerned with your honor at this moment. Squad Leader, we are concerned with the potential dissolution of the Alliance. Your actions have created a diplomatic situation that threatens years of progress." One of the human security officers shifted uncomfortably. Arin recognized him as Sergeant Torres, a veteran who had fought alongside Varric forces during the hegemony border conflicts 3 years prior. There was no hostility in his posture, only wariness, the natural caution of a soldier in an uncertain situation. "The human medical report indicates a fractured radius and significant facial contusion," Rail continued. "Dr. Morris has submitted documentation stating that had the blow landed slightly differently, it could have caused orbital fracture or traumatic brain injury. The gravity of the potential consequences hit Arin like a physical blow. He had not merely struck a subordinate. He had nearly caused catastrophic injury to an unarmed civilian researcher. He began, then closed his mouth. There were no words in either Varric or human languages that could adequately express the conflict raging within him, between the pride that demanded he accept full responsibility and the growing certainty that something external had influenced his actions. The door to the investigation room slid open, and Lieutenant Mira entered, her face set in a mask of professional detachment that did nothing to hide the anger simmering beneath. "Major." She acknowledged Rail with a nod. "I have the preliminary security scan results you requested." Rail gestured for her to continue, and Mira activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a rotating model of Arin's armor, with certain sections highlighted in pulsing red. "Our technical team has identified anomalous code embedded in Squad Leader Arin's neural interface," she stated, her voice clinically precise. "Specifically, in the emotional regulation and impulse control subroutines." Arin stared at the display in disbelief. "That's impossible. My armor undergoes security scans daily." The code was designed to evade standard security protocols. Mira continued as if he hadn't spoken. "It appears to have been injected remotely, possibly during your morning patrol near the communications array." Rael's expression darkened. You're suggesting sabotage. I'm reporting facts, sir. Mira replied. The interpretation is for command to determine. Arin felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest, a mixture of vindication and horror. If his armor had been compromised, it meant he wasn't responsible for his actions. But it also meant that someone had been able to override the most sacred connection a Varric warrior possessed: the link between mind and armor. Who has access to such technology? Rael demanded. That's the concerning part, sir, Mira said, expanding the holographic display to show a complex code structure. This bears hallmarks of hegemony encryption patterns. The hegemony, a collective of worlds that had opposed the Orion Alliance since its formation, viewing the cooperation between humans and Varric as an abomination that threatened the purity of all species involved. They had been suspiciously quiet in recent months, leading many to believe they had finally accepted the alliance as permanent. Lieutenant, Rael said carefully, these findings must remain classified until verified by our security specialist. Is Caro available? A flicker of something, hesitation, concern, crossed Mira's face. Specialist Caro is currently reviewing the outpost's external security feeds. He reported anomalies in the perimeter scanners that coincided with the time of the incident. Arin's mind raced. Caro had been present during the confrontation with Aya. In fact, he had been the one to comment on the protocol violation, escalating the situation. If there was sabotage involved, could Caro be implicated? I want Specialist Caro relieved of duty until we can verify his systems haven't also been compromised, Rael ordered. Sir. Arin spoke up, unable to contain himself any longer. If my armor was sabotaged, others may be affected as well. The entire Varric contingent should be screened. Rael studied him for a long moment. Your concern is noted. Squad leader. However, you remain relieved of duty until cleared by both technical and psychological evaluation. The implication was clear. Even if his armor had been tampered with, Arin's judgment was still in question. A true Varric warrior was expected to maintain control regardless of circumstances, to override even technological manipulation through sheer force of will if necessary. What about Specialist Aya? Arin asked, surprising himself with the question. Mira's expression hardened. She's been treated and released to quarters. Her arm will heal completely within a few days thanks to regeneration therapy. But that doesn't erase what happened. I would like to formally apologize. Arin said stiffly. That won't be necessary. A new voice joined the conversation as the door slid open again. Aya stood in the doorway, her injured arm in a sophisticated medical brace. The bruising on her face had been reduced by treatment, but still formed a visible mark across her cheekbone. Despite her injuries, she carried herself with dignity, meeting Arin's gaze directly. Specialist, you should be resting. Rael began. But Aya raised her hand in a polite gesture of interruption. With respect, Major, I believe my perspective is relevant to this investigation. She stepped fully into the room, the door closing behind her. I've reviewed the medical scans of my injury, and something doesn't add up. Mira moved protectively toward her friend. Aya, you don't need to be here. Actually, I do. Aya insisted, her voice gaining strength. The angle and force of the blow that struck me is inconsistent with Varric anatomy and training. Arin blinked in confusion. What was the human talking about? Explain, Rael demanded. Aya activated her tablet with her good hand, projecting another hologram alongside the armor schematic. This one showed a biomechanical analysis of the incident. with force vectors and impact trajectories highlighted. Viric warriors are trained to strike with precise, controlled force. She began, her tone shifting to the methodical cadence of a scientific presentation. Their neural interfaces are calibrated to prevent accidental excessive force when interacting with physically weaker species. But the blow I received was both imprecise and specifically calculated to cause maximum psychological impact with minimum permanent damage. She manipulated the hologram, highlighting the point of impact. It's a pattern consistent with hegemony intimidation tactics, not Viric disciplinary protocols. The room fell silent as the implications of her analysis sunk in. Arin stared at the human researcher with new eyes. She had not only identified that his actions were manipulated, but had used her scientific expertise to prove it. And in doing so, had potentially saved his career and the Alliance itself. "You came to this conclusion from your medical scans?" Rael asked, clearly impressed despite himself. "From the scans and from my research," Aya confirmed. "I've been studying interspecies conflict resolution for 3 years. The pattern was clear once I looked beyond the immediate circumstances." Arin found his voice. "Why would you defend me?" Aya turned to him, her expression unreadable. "I'm not defending you, squad leader. I'm defending the truth and the alliance that both our peoples have worked to build." Something unspoken passed between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, that they were both pawns in a larger game, one that threatened everything they had dedicated their lives to protecting. Major Rail's communicator chimed with an urgent signal. "Speak," he commanded. "Sir," came the voice of a Viric security officer. "We've detected unauthorized access to the main research database. Someone is attempting to download the xenobiological weapons research." Rail was on his feet instantly. "Location: Laboratory Complex B, sir. Security teams are en route." "That's my laboratory," Aya said, her face paling beneath the bruising. Mira drew her sidearm. "The timing is too perfect. This is connected to the assault." "Agreed," Rail said grimly. "Lieutenant, secure the specialist and escort her to the command center lockdown area." "No," Aya protested. "My research could be weaponized if it falls into hegemony hands. I need to secure the primary samples." Arin stood, towering over the humans despite his lack of armor. "Major, if this is indeed a coordinated hegemony operation, they will have planned for our standard security response. We need to act unpredictably." Rael hesitated, weighing his options. Standard protocol would indeed call for securing all civilian personnel in designated safe areas while military teams handled the threat. But if Arin was right, that might be exactly what the infiltrators expected. "What do you propose, squad leader?" Rail finally asked. "Let me escort Specialist Aya to secure her research." Arin said, "Without my armor, I won't be affected by any further technological manipulation, and no one would expect you to trust me after what happened." "Absolutely not," Mira objected. "He just assaulted her." "Lieutenant," Aya said quietly, "he's right. It's tactically sound." The room fell silent again, as all eyes turned to Rail. As commanding officer, his decision would determine not only their immediate actions, but potentially the future of the Alliance itself. "Squad Leader Arin, you will escort Specialist Aya to secure her critical research," Rail finally ordered. "Lieutenant Mira, coordinate with security teams to establish a diversion. Make it appear as though we're following standard lockdown procedures." "Sir," Mira began to protest. "That's an order, Lieutenant." Rail cut her off. "Sometimes preserving an alliance requires trust, even when all evidence suggests it's unwise." Arin nodded solemnly. understanding the weight of responsibility being placed upon him. "I will protect the specialist with my life, sir." "See that you do," Rael replied. "Because if any further harm comes to her, the consequences will extend far beyond your individual career or honor." As alarms began to sound throughout the outpost, Arin turned to Aya, noticing for the first time the determination in her eyes that matched his own. Despite their differences, physical, cultural, and philosophical, they now shared a common purpose that transcended the boundaries between their species. "Ready, specialist?" he asked, with more respect in his tone than he had ever shown a human before. Aya straightened her shoulders, wincing slightly at the movement of her injured arm. "Lead the way, squad leader." Together, they stepped into the corridor, moving against the flow of personnel heading for secure areas, an unlikely pair united by crisis, walking directly toward danger rather than away from it. The emergency lighting bathed the corridors of Outpost Orion 7 in pulsing amber, casting long shadows that seemed to dance along the walls as Arin and Aya moved swiftly against the tide of personnel evacuating to secure areas. Automated announcements in both human and Varic languages echoed through the station, instructing all non-security personnel to report to designated safety zones. "We need to take the maintenance shafts," Aya said, her voice low as they paused at an intersection. "The main corridors will be monitored." Arin nodded, impressed despite himself by the human's tactical thinking. Without his armor and neural interface, he felt oddly vulnerable, yet also clearer-minded than he had in months. The constant background hum of data and sensory enhancement was gone, leaving his natural Virac senses, still considerably sharper than a human's, to guide him. "There." He pointed to a service hatch partially concealed behind a structural support. "Can you manage with your injury?" Aya gave him a look that contained equal parts determination and irritation. "I've conducted field research on 3 hostile planets. Squad leader, a broken arm won't stop me from saving my work." Without waiting for his response, she moved to the hatch and entered a complex override code that Arin noted was far above her clearance level. When he raised an eye-ridge in question, she merely shrugged her uninjured shoulder. "Xenobiologists need to go everywhere to collect samples," she said simply. "Official channels are slow." The hatch slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel designed primarily for repair drones rather than humanoid access. Aya slipped in without hesitation, forcing Arin to awkwardly fold his larger Viric frame to follow. The cramped space brought them uncomfortably close. Her scent, a mixture of the standard-issue soap used on the station and something uniquely human, filling his olfactory receptors. "My laboratory is 2 levels down, east quadrant," Aya explained as they crawled through the passage. "The most critical research materials are stored in a biometrically sealed container that will only respond to my genetic signature." "What exactly are these materials?" Arin asked, his curiosity overcoming his usual reserve. Aya was silent for a moment, apparently weighing how much to reveal. "I've been studying the microbiome of Arcal's indigenous life forms. They've evolved extraordinary adaptation mechanisms to survive the planet's extreme conditions. And this is valuable enough for the hegemony to orchestrate an infiltration." "The applications go beyond scientific interest," she admitted. "Some of these microorganisms could be modified to enhance or disable technological systems, including Varic neural interfaces." Arin froze mid-crawl. "You were developing biological weapons?" "No." Aya's voice was firm. "I was researching biological defenses against technological warfare. But in the wrong hands, any defense can become a weapon." Aaron finished the thought, a new understanding dawning. Is that why you recognized so quickly that my armor had been compromised? You were already studying similar vulnerabilities? The maintenance shaft opened into a junction room, allowing them to stand briefly. In the dim emergency lighting, Aya's face was a study in shadows, the bruise on her cheek appearing darker than it had in the investigation room. Yes, she said simply. My team identified several potential attack vectors against integrated biological technological systems, like your armor. We were developing countermeasures when... She gestured vaguely to her injured arm. When I was used to interrupt your work. Aaron said grimly. The pieces were beginning to align in a pattern that disturbed him deeply. The attack wasn't just about creating discord between our species. It was specifically targeted to disrupt your research before you could develop effective protections. A distant explosion rocked the station, causing dust to drift down from the ceiling panels. The diversion Lieutenant Mira had orchestrated was apparently in full effect, drawing attention away from their true objective. We need to move, Aya urged, already opening the next access panel. That won't keep them distracted for long. They descended through 2 more levels of maintenance shafts before emerging in a utility corridor just outside the laboratory complex. The security doors stood ominously open, a clear sign that someone had already breached the area. Aaron held up a hand, signaling Aya to remain behind him as he carefully approached the entrance. Without his armor's enhanced sensors, he had to rely on his natural abilities, focusing his hearing to detect any movement within. 2 individuals, he whispered after a moment. One near the central workstation, one moving between storage units. Can you tell if they're human or Varric? Aya asked, her voice barely audible. Aaron concentrated harder. The footfalls are too light for Varric. Humans, or possibly Centauri mercenaries. The Centauri were notorious for hiring themselves out to any faction that could afford their services. Physically similar to humans, but with enhanced reflexes and pain suppression implants. They made ideal infiltrators for operations requiring a blend of technological sophistication and biological adaptability. We're outmatched without weapons, Aya observed. We need to... Before she could finish, Aaron moved with the silent grace that had made him a legendary scout during the Varric Civil War. He slipped into the shadows beside the doorway, motioning for Aya to retreat further down the corridor. Instead, to his consternation, she moved closer, reaching into a utility pocket on her uniform and extracting what appeared to be a small cylindrical device. Sonic disruptor. She mouthed silently at his questioning look. Non-lethal, but effective against most neural systems, including Centauri implants. Aaron reassessed the slight human researcher yet again. Apparently, her preparation for fieldwork on hostile planets included more than just scientific equipment. He nodded once, then used hand signals to communicate his plan. He would enter first as a distraction, and she would deploy the disruptor when the intruders were focused on him. Aya confirmed her understanding with a terse nod, her earlier fear seemingly replaced by the focused calm of a trained operative. This was not the behavior Aaron expected from a civilian scientist, and a new suspicion formed in his mind. One he would need to address if they survived the next few minutes. Taking a deep breath, Aaron launched himself through the doorway, using his substantial Virac physiology to create maximum psychological impact. As expected, both intruders whirled to face him, and as Aaron had suspected, they bore the distinctive facial markings of Centauri operatives. "Virac," one of them hissed, reaching for a weapon concealed beneath his technician's uniform. Aaron didn't give him the chance to draw. He charged forward, using the momentum of his heavier frame to slam into the Centauri before he could bring his weapon to bear. They crashed into a laboratory table, sending equipment scattering across the floor. The second intruder was quicker, managing to extract a compact pulse pistol and level it at Aaron's head. "Don't move, or your skull decorates the wall," he snarled. From the doorway came a high-pitched whine as Aya activated the sonic disruptor. The effect on the Centauri was immediate and dramatic. Both intruders clutched their heads in agony as their neural implants reacted violently to the precisely calibrated sound waves. Aaron, whose natural varic hearing was painful, sensitive to the disruptor but not incapacitated by it, seized the opportunity to disarm the second Centauri. He wrenched the pulse pistol away and delivered a precise strike to the base of the operative's skull, rendering him unconscious. The first Centauri, still disoriented from both the collision and the sonic attack, attempted to crawl toward a fallen communicator. Aya calmly walked over and increased the disruptor's intensity, focusing it directly on him until he too collapsed into unconsciousness. "Effective," Aaron commented as the whine of the disruptor faded. "Illegal in 17 star systems." Aya replied matter-of-factly, pocketing the device and moving immediately to a seemingly ordinary storage unit at the far end of the laboratory. "Help me secure these two while I access the primary samples." Aaron found restraint cables in an emergency kit and efficiently bound the Centauri operatives. As he worked, he observed Aya from the corner of his eye. She had placed her palm against a nondescript panel on the storage unit, which responded with a series of lights as it scanned her genetic signature. The panel slid open to reveal a small, heavily shielded container. "Got it," she said with evident relief, removing the container and securing it in a specialized pouch on her uniform. "Now we need to destroy the secondary samples and research data. They can't be allowed to fall into hegemony hands." "Specialist," Aaron said carefully. "Before we proceed, I must ask, what is your actual role here? You've demonstrated skills and knowledge beyond what would be expected of a xenobiological researcher." Aya paused in the midst of accessing a computer terminal, her fingers hovering over the interface. For a long moment, she seemed to be making a decision. When she finally looked up at him, her expression had changed subtly, the scholarly demeanor replaced by something harder, more focused. "I hold dual qualifications," she said. "Xenobiology is my primary field, but I'm also attached to Alliance Intelligence. My assignment here was to develop countermeasures against biological technological hybrid weapons while monitoring for hegemony infiltration." "You were a spy," Aaron said flatly, "watching us." "I was an intelligence operative watching everyone," she corrected, "including you. Squad leader. Your name had appeared in several encrypted communications we intercepted from suspected hegemony sympathizers. The revelation should have angered him. Being under surveillance was an affront to Varic honor. But instead, Aaron felt a strange sense of respect growing for this human who had maintained her cover so effectively while executing a complex mission. "Did you suspect I was a traitor?" he asked. "We had no conclusive evidence," Aya replied, turning back to the terminal and initiating what appeared to be a data purge protocol. "But your background raised certain flags. Your family was killed during the Varac Civil War by pro-Alliance factions, weren't they?" The mention of his family sent a jolt of old pain through Aaron's chest. "Yes," he said stiffly. "They supported isolation rather than alliance with other species. Their compound was targeted for harboring separatist leaders, making you a perfect recruitment target for the hegemony," Aya said, not unkindly. "They specialize in exploiting personal tragedy to turn potential assets against the Alliance. I'm no traitor," Aaron stated, drawing himself up to his full height. Whatever my family's politics, I swore an oath to the Alliance. I believe you, Aya said, surprising him again. If you were truly compromised, you would have taken the opportunity to eliminate me during our escape. The fact that you didn't confirms what the armor analysis suggested. You were being manipulated, not willingly collaborating. A new explosion, much closer than the first, rocked the laboratory. Alarms changed tone, indicating an escalation in the station's alert status. That wasn't part of our diversion, Aya said grimly, finishing the data purge. We need to move. Wait, Aaron said, an idea forming. The Centauri, they must have a way to communicate with their handlers. If we could trace their signal, already on it. Aya confirmed, kneeling beside the unconscious operatives and expertly searching their equipment. She extracted a small communication device from one of their hidden pockets. Standard hegemony encryption. I can use this to feed false information back to their command structure, or to identify their primary operative within the outpost. Aaron suggested. The one who orchestrated the attack on your research and the manipulation of my armor. Aya looked up at him, a new respect in her eyes. You think like an intelligence operative, squad leader? I think like a warrior who wants to find who dishonored him by using him as a puppet. Aaron corrected, his voice hardening. Can you trace the signal? Better than that, Aya said, manipulating the device with practiced efficiency. I can identify the specific receiver frequency they were using. Her face paled as she looked at the results. No. What is it? Aaron moved to look over her shoulder. The receiver is registered to Specialist Caro's personal communication node. She said quietly. Your fellow Virac is the hegemony agent. The revelation struck Aaron like a physical blow. Caro, a warrior he had trained with, fought alongside, trusted with his life on multiple occasions. The same Caro who had been present when he struck Aya, who had commented on the protocol violation that escalated the situation. Are you certain? He demanded, though he already knew the answer. The pieces align too perfectly to be coincidence. The encryption signature is unmistakable. Aya confirmed, showing him the display. And it explains how your armor's neural interface could be compromised so precisely. As a security specialist, Caro would have access to the armor maintenance systems. He knows we're onto him now. Aaron realized. Those explosions, he's creating chaos to cover his escape, or to finish what he started. Aya said grimly, if he can't steal my research, he'll destroy it, and probably the entire outpost with it. Aaron made a swift decision. Take your samples and head for the command center. Major Rail needs to know about Caro immediately. What about you? Aya asked, already securing the container with her samples. I'm going after Caro, Aaron stated, his voice deadly calm as he picked up the pulse pistol he had taken from the Centauri operative. This is a matter of Varic honor now. That's not the mission. Aya protested. We need to secure the research and you secure the research. Aaron cut her off. I'll secure the traitor. For a moment, they stared at each other. A silent battle of wills between two very different warriors from very different worlds. Finally, Aya nodded. Don't get yourself killed, squad leader, she said. I'd hate to have wasted my time defending your reputation, despite everything. Aaron felt the corner of his mouth twitch in what might almost have been a smile. Likewise, Specialist. It would be unfortunate if I had to explain to Major Rael how I lost both a traitor and an intelligence operative in one day. With that, They parted, Aya heading toward the command center with her precious cargo, Aren moving deeper into the station where the explosions had originated, hunting the warrior who had betrayed not only the Alliance, but the sacred honor of the Varric themselves. 8. The emergency lighting flickered erratically as Aren moved through the damaged sections of the outpost. The explosions had been strategically placed to disable security systems and create maximum confusion. The work of someone intimately familiar with the station's layout and vulnerabilities. Caro's work. Smoke hung in the air, acrid and thick, forcing Aren to rely more on his hearing and instinct than vision. Without his armor's enhanced sensory systems, he felt almost blind. But there was also a purity to it, facing a traitor with nothing but his natural abilities and a stolen weapon. A group of human technicians rushed past him, heading toward a ruptured cooling conduit. They barely spared him a glance, too focused on preventing a catastrophic system failure to question why a Varric warrior was moving against the flow of emergency responders. Aren accessed a wall terminal, using his command codes to bring up the station schematic. If he were Caro, planning an escape during chaos he had created, where would he go? Not the main shuttle bay. It would be locked down immediately under emergency protocols. Not the emergency evacuation pods. They were designed for short-range planetary descent, not interstellar travel. There was only one viable option: the maintenance shuttle in Docking Bay 7, used for external station repairs and technically exempt from automatic lockdown procedures due to its potential role in emergency response. Aren plotted the most direct route, noting with grim satisfaction that it would take him through areas likely to be deserted during the current crisis. A confrontation with Caro would be best handled away from witnesses, not to hide what must be done, but to protect innocent bystanders from a desperate Varric warrior with nothing to lose. As he approached the auxiliary corridor leading to Docking Bay 7, Aren slowed his pace, moving with the silent precision that had made him one of the most effective scouts during the Civil War. The corridor ahead was darkened, emergency lighting disabled, another sign of Caro's methodical sabotage. Aren pressed himself against the wall, listening intently. There, the faint sound of movement, the whisper of armor plates adjusting as someone tried to move silently. Unlike Aren, Caro would still be wearing his full combat armor, giving him significant advantages in strength and protection, but also making it impossible for him to move with complete silence. Positioning the pulse pistol carefully, Aren called out in formal Varric battle language. "Face me, Oathbreaker. Face the judgment of your clan and ancestors." The movement ahead stopped abruptly, followed by a low, familiar laugh. "Still clinging to ancient traditions, Aren, even after they got your family killed?" Caro's voice emerged from the darkness, its location impossible to pinpoint accurately as it bounced off the metal corridor walls. He was using his armor's audio projection systems to mask his position. "My family died with honor." Aren replied evenly. "Something you will never understand. Traitor. Honor?" Caro's voice dripped with contempt. "What honor is there in allowing our species to be diluted by alliance with lesser beings? The humans use us as their warriors while they claim the benefits of peace. The Varric were meant to stand alone, to conquer rather than cooperate." "Those are hegemony words," Aren said, edging forward carefully. "Not Varric wisdom. The hegemony understands what our leadership has forgotten." Caro countered. "Purity of purpose, strength through separation, the natural order of dominance." A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor, too obvious, too careless for a warrior of Caro's experience. A distraction. Aren realized, designed to draw his fire and reveal his position. Instead of shooting, Aaron dropped flat to the floor just as a pulse blast cut through the air where he had been standing. The shot came from behind him. Caro had doubled back, using the ventilation system to circle around. Your reflexes are still sharp, even without your armor, Caro commented, his voice now undisguised and coming from the junction behind Aaron. Impressive. It's why I always respected you, despite your misguided loyalties. Aaron rolled to face the new threat, bringing the pulse pistol to bear on Caro's armored form. The security specialist stood confidently at the corridor junction, his own weapon leveled at Aaron's head. In the dim emergency lighting, Caro's armor gleamed with an oily sheen, modified with non-standard components that must have come from hegemony technology. You used me, Aaron said, his voice deadly calm. You manipulated my armor to attack the human. A simple test. Caro replied with a shrug that rippled through his armor's hydraulics. I needed to create discord between species while simultaneously disrupting the xenobiologist's research. Your performance exceeded expectations. You dishonored me. Aaron growled, made me violate my oath to the Alliance. I freed you from an oath that should never have been made. Caro countered. The Varric who bound our people to these humans betrayed our heritage. I merely showed you the truth, that deep down, you still resent them for what happened to your family. Aaron's finger tightened on the trigger, but he hesitated. A pulse pistol would be unlikely to penetrate Caro's advanced armor, especially at this range. He needed to get closer, to find a vulnerable point. If that were true, Aaron said, slowly rising to a crouch, I would have killed the human researcher when I had the chance. Instead, I protected her and her work. Caro's helmet tilted slightly, indicating confusion or surprise. You've been busy. I see. No matter. The primary objectives have been accomplished. The Alliance will investigate this incident for months, questioning the wisdom of integrated units. Seeds of doubt have been planted. Seeds that will never flower, came a new voice from the shadows behind Caro. Aya stepped into view. Her sonic disruptor aimed directly at Caro's helmet. Her injured arm was still in its brace, but her stance was steady, her expression determined. The specialist, Caro said, his voice betraying only mild surprise. I should have ensured you were more permanently disabled during our first encounter. You'll find I'm difficult to disable. Aya replied coolly, as is the Alliance you're trying to undermine. We've already transmitted evidence of hegemony infiltration to Alliance Command. Your mission has failed. Specialist Caro. Caro laughed. The sound distorted through his helmet's audio systems. Has it? Look around you. This outpost is crippled. Trust between species is broken. And I still have time to eliminate 2 troublesome witnesses before making my escape. With lightning speed, Caro swung his weapon toward Aya. Aaron reacted instantly, firing the pulse pistol not at Caro's armored body, but at the ceiling conduits above him. The shot connected, rupturing a pressurized coolant line that burst in a shower of caustic fluid directly onto Caro's armor. The security specialist roared in pain as the coolant began to eat through the external layers of his armor, creating gaps in the otherwise impenetrable defense. Aya seized the opportunity, activating the sonic disruptor at its highest setting, focusing the debilitating sound waves directly at Caro's now compromised helmet. The combined attack drove Caro to his knees, his armor systems fluctuating wildly as the neural interface was disrupted by the sonic attack, while the physical structure was compromised by the corrosive coolant. Aaron closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. ripping Caro's damaged helmet free with a strength born of righteous fury. Beneath it, Caro's face was contorted with pain and rage, his eyes wild with hatred. "The hegemony will never stop," he spat. "This alliance is doomed." "No," Aren said quietly. "It is stronger than you know." Without another word, he delivered a precise strike to Caro's exposed neck, rendering the traitor unconscious. As Caro slumped to the floor, Aren looked up to find Aya watching him with an unreadable expression. "You were supposed to go to the command center," he said, unable to keep a note of grudging admiration from his voice. "I did," she replied, lowering the sonic disruptor. "Reported to Major Rail, secured my research, and then came to find you. Intelligence operatives don't like loose ends." "And I was a loose end?" "No," Aya said, her expression softening slightly. "You were an ally who needed backup." Aren found himself at a loss for words, a rare occurrence for a Varric warrior. This human had defended him during the investigation, fought alongside him against the Centauri, and now had come to his aid against Caro, all after he had struck her in full view of their colleagues. "Why?" he finally asked. Aya seemed to understand the question beneath the question. "Because the alliance matters more than individual grievances. Because working together accomplishes more than fighting separately." She paused, then added more quietly, "And because I recognized a warrior being used against his will, fighting to reclaim his honor." Security teams were approaching from both ends of the corridor now, drawn by the sounds of the confrontation. Major Rail led them personally, his expression grave as he surveyed the scene. Caro unconscious and restrained. Aren standing over him with the pulse pistol still in hand, and Aya with her illegal sonic disruptor clearly visible. "Squad leader, specialist." Rail acknowledged them both. "I see you've apprehended our traitor." "We have, sir," Aren confirmed, handing the pulse pistol to a security officer. Specialist Caro was the hegemony agent. He orchestrated the attack on Specialist Aya and the subsequent theft attempt. "So I've been informed," Rail said, glancing at Aya. "The specialist made a rather comprehensive report before coming to find you, including her own role as an intelligence operative." Aren raised an eye-ridge in surprise. Full disclosure was not typically the way of intelligence operatives. "Circumstances required transparency, sir," Aya explained. The investigation into squad leader Aren's actions needed to be closed decisively so we could focus on the real threat. Rael nodded slowly. "Indeed. And it seems you two have handled that threat with surprising efficiency." He gestured to the security team to take custody of Caro. "Take him to the high-security detention area. Full isolation protocols." As Caro was carried away, still unconscious, Rael turned back to Aren and Aya. "The Alliance High Command has been notified of the situation. They're sending a special investigative team to assess the damage and secure the outpost against further infiltration." "And what of us, sir?" Aren asked, standing at rigid attention despite his exhaustion and the lingering pain from the confrontation. "You remain relieved of duty pending a full medical evaluation and armor security review," Rael stated firmly. "But," he added, his tone softening slightly, "your actions today will be noted in my report. The alliance was built on the principle that different species, working together, can overcome threats that would defeat them separately. You two have provided a rather dramatic demonstration of that principle." "Thank you, sir," Aya said, her professional demeanor returning now that the immediate danger had passed. "With your permission, I'd like to return to the laboratory to assess what data may have been compromised." "Granted," Rael said. But first, both of you report to medical. That's an order. As they made their way through the damaged corridors toward the medical bay, RN found himself walking beside Aya rather than in front of her, as Viric protocol would dictate. It felt strange, but not uncomfortable. A small adjustment that somehow symbolized a larger shift in his perception. "Your arm," he said awkwardly, nodding toward her injured limb still secured in its brace. "How severe is the damage?" "Hairline fracture," she replied matter-of-factly. "The regeneration therapy is already working. In a few days, it will be as if it never happened." "But it did happen," Aaron said quietly. "And for that, I owe you a formal apology according to both our traditions." Aya stopped walking, turning to face him directly. "Squad leader Aaron, you were manipulated against your will. The fault lies with Karo and the hegemony, not with you." "Nevertheless," Aaron insisted, "my body struck you. My honor requires acknowledgement of that fact, regardless of the circumstances." For a long moment, Aya studied him, her analytical gaze seeming to catalog every aspect of his expression and posture. Finally, she nodded. "Then I accept your apology, squad leader, and I offer one of my own, for not detecting the threat sooner, and for allowing you to be used as a weapon against the very alliance you serve." The exchange felt strangely ceremonial, a bridging of their cultural differences through mutual respect. As they resumed walking, Aaron found himself wondering if perhaps this was the true purpose of the alliance, not merely strategic advantage or shared resources, but the gradual building of understanding between fundamentally different beings. "The hegemony will try again," he said after a while. "Karo was right about one thing. They will never stop trying to divide us." "No," Aya agreed. "They won't. Which is why we need to be better at working together. Your strength and my research. Varic honor and human adaptability." "An interesting proposition. Specialist," Aaron said, allowing himself the smallest suggestion of a smile, a rare expression for a Viric warrior. "Perhaps we should discuss it further once medical has cleared us both for duty." "I'd like that," Aya replied, her own smile cautious but genuine. "After all, we've already overcome one significant cultural barrier." "Which is?" "You haven't called me human in at least an hour," she pointed out. "You've been using my rank and even my name." Aaron blinked in surprise, realizing she was correct. Somewhere amid the chaos and danger, he had begun to see her not as a representative of her species, but as an individual, complex, capable, and worthy of respect on her own merits. "So I have," he acknowledged. "Aya." As they entered the medical bay, the staff already rushing to attend to their injuries, Aaron reflected that perhaps this was how alliances truly formed. Not through grand treaties or diplomatic ceremonies, but in the trenches of shared struggle, where differences became strengths rather than barriers. And ancient prejudices gave way to newfound respect. The hegemony had sought to drive a wedge between species with a single, violent act. Instead, they had forged a bond stronger than any they could have imagined. A partnership that might one day help secure the very alliance they had tried to destroy. 3 weeks after what was now being officially referred to as the Arkal incident, Aaron stood on the observation deck of Outpost Orion 7, watching the 3 moons of the desert planet rise over the eastern horizon. The repairs to the station were nearly complete, structural damage mended, systems restored to full functionality. If only personal wounds could be healed as efficiently as machinery, he thought. The sound of the observation deck door sliding open broke his reverie. He didn't need to turn to know who had entered. He had grown familiar with the rhythm of her footsteps, the subtle changes in the air when she was present. "Squad leader." Aya greeted him, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. Her arm was fully healed now, the medical brace long since removed. She wore her standard research uniform, but with a new insignia that acknowledged her dual role as both scientist and intelligence operative. Specialist. He returned the greeting, noting how they had fallen into a comfortable pattern of formal address that somehow conveyed more warmth than any casual terms could have. "The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow," she said, getting directly to the point as had become their habit. "Alliance Command wants to review the entire incident before making final determinations about the future of the integrated unit program." Aaron nodded, having expected as much. "And Caro?" "Already transferred to the Alliance Detention Center on Proxima Station." Aya replied. "The Intelligence Division is working with him to identify other hegemony agents within our ranks." The slight hesitation told Aaron all he needed to know about the methods being employed. He felt no sympathy for the traitor. Barak justice would have been swifter but no less thorough. "Have you prepared your testimony?" he asked. "Yes. I'll present the evidence regarding the manipulation of your neural interface and Caro's role in the attempted theft of my research." She paused, then added more carefully, "I've also included a formal recommendation that you be restored to full duty status and considered for commendation." Aaron turned to look at her, surprise evident in his expression despite his usual Varric reserve. "Commendation? I struck a civilian researcher and violated multiple protocols. Under enemy influence." Aya countered firmly. "And you subsequently risked your life to protect both that researcher and critical Alliance technology. The record should reflect both parts of that story." "The record should reflect the truth," Aaron said, turning back to the viewport. "Including my failure to resist the manipulation. A Varric warrior is expected to maintain control regardless of circumstances. An impossible standard." Aya observed quietly. "Even for the Varric?" "Perhaps." Aaron conceded. "But standards exist to be strived for, not necessarily achieved." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the smallest of Arkal's moons completed its rapid ascent into the night sky. In the distance, a sandstorm was brewing on the planet's surface, visible as a dark smudge against the horizon. "Major Rail has received new orders," Aya eventually said. "After the hearing, regardless of outcome, he's being reassigned to command the Vega Sector Defense Fleet." "A promotion?" Aaron noted. "Well-deserved." "Yes, and he's been authorized to select key personnel to accompany him." She turned to face him directly. "He wants both of us on his command staff, you as Chief of Security, me as Science Officer and Intelligence Liaison." Aaron considered this unexpected development. The Vega Sector was a critical boundary region between Alliance space and territories known to harbor hegemony sympathizers. Such an assignment would place them at the forefront of efforts to counter future infiltration attempts. "You've already accepted," he observed, reading her expression. "I have," she confirmed. "But Rail was explicit that the security position is yours only if you want it. There would be no shame in requesting a different assignment after everything that's happened." "You mean after being used as a puppet by enemy agents and striking a fellow officer?" Aaron said bluntly. "After being targeted specifically because of your exceptional record and position of influence." Aya corrected him. "The hegemony doesn't waste resources on inconsequential targets. Squad leader." Despite everything, Arin felt a small surge of pride at her assessment. And you? Are you not concerned about serving alongside the Varak who assaulted you? I'm concerned about serving with the best security officer in the fleet. She replied without hesitation. Who happens to have first-hand experience with the enemy's latest technological warfare tactics? Arin turned fully to face her, studying the human who had somehow become more than just an ally, perhaps even a friend. Though such concepts were difficult to translate between their cultures, there would be talk, he said carefully. Questions about whether you can trust me, whether I might be manipulated again. Let them talk, Aya said with a dismissive gesture. We know the truth, and we'll be taking precautions. She reached into her pocket and extracted a small device, offering it to him. My research team completed the countermeasure system. This shield generator will prevent any external interference with your neural interface, the first of its kind, based partly on what we learned from analyzing how Karo compromised your systems. Arin accepted the device, turning it over in his hands. It was elegantly designed, small enough to be incorporated into his armor without affecting mobility or function. This is significant, he said, understanding immediately the implications of such technology for all Varak warriors. It's the beginning, Aya said, a hint of pride in her voice. One tangible result of human and Varak cooperation. There will be more if we continue working together. The double meaning was clear. This wasn't just about their species, but about them specifically. Arin and Aya, warrior and scientist, continuing the partnership that had begun in crisis. I'll accept Major Rail's offer, Arin decided, on one condition, which is that my first duty as Chief of Security will be to implement proper protocol training for all scientific personnel. He said, the faintest hint of humor in his voice, particularly regarding appropriate ways to address superior officers. Aya's surprised laugh echoed in the observation deck. Accepted, squad leader, though I should warn you that intelligence operatives are notoriously resistant to protocol. Then it will be an appropriate challenge, Arin replied, feeling something long dormant stirring within him, a sense of purpose beyond mere duty, perhaps even hope for a future he had stopped believing in after his family's death. Together they turned back to the viewport, watching as the sandstorm on Arkal's surface gathered strength, beautiful and dangerous in its wild power. Much like the alliance they served, tumultuous at times. Not without conflict, but ultimately stronger for the diversity of forces it contained. For what it's worth, Aya said softly, I believe your family would be proud of the warrior you've become. Areen, one who fights not just for the Varak, but for something larger. Coming from anyone else, such a statement would have been an unforgivable presumption, but from her, from Aya, it felt like a truth he had been waiting to hear. And your family? He asked, realizing he knew almost nothing of her background, despite all they had been through together. They were both Alliance scientists, she said, a shadow passing briefly across her face. Killed during a hegemony raid on a research outpost when I was 14. I was raised by my uncle after that, a diplomatic officer who believed passionately in what the Alliance could become. Understanding dawned on Arin. They were not so different after all. Both orphaned by the very conflicts that had shaped their worlds. Both driven to ensure others would not suffer similar losses. Then perhaps, he said carefully, we are both honoring those who came before us by standing here now, working to build what they envisioned. Perhaps we are. Aya agreed, her gaze meeting his with newfound understanding, as the stars wheeled slowly overhead. Human and Verac stood side by side, watching the future unfold before them, uncertain, challenging, but faced together. The hegemony had sought to drive them apart with a single act of violence, but had instead forged a bond that would ripple outward through the alliance, strengthening it in ways they could not yet imagine. It was not peace, not yet, but it was a beginning.